All right. Well, welcome to MoreTalk. It's 2 p.m. Eastern, and that must mean it's 11 a.m. Pacific
It's,
time, right, Mike?
yeah, we're we're still. I'm still waking up and drinking my first cup of coffee, even though I've been up for 5 hours.
Yep. And I've been on just finishing mine. Been on a couple meetings throughout the day, and hearing a lot of people in operations giving their side of the story. But it is going to be there's not much volume out there for loan officers to get here in November and December. So it's time to kind of look at everything you're doing, look at consolidation, look at culture, figure things out. And I think hopefully we can get some loan officers maybe up on stage or somehow just speak about, from a loan officer mindset, the ones that are in charge of going out there and getting that production. How is that impacting their lives right now? And what decisions are they making as they see companies like Homestar? Is that what it was? A Weststar? As
Yeah, I
they
mean, regardless of the company that it is, I mean, are we? Is it setting the stage for other leaders in the mortgage industry to sit here and go, well, we saw what happened with Sprout when they screwed everybody over, when they just let everybody go and he kept all the money, and we didn't pay checks, but this time they're learning. The C-suite executives are saying, you know what? We've got X amount of money in the bank. It could be millions of dollars. It could be billions of dollars. We actually don't know, right? It could be $100 million. It could be $500 million, and we're going to let everybody go, and then we're going to start over again. I think that there's something to be said as a business person to say, do you want to take a 1-year reset while you have money? And I don't know if that's the right thing to do. All I know is that is that something that could happen today? Because if Sprout did it, are other executives thinking of, I just need to exit while the getting is good, and then we can come back when they did? Because I forget the leader's name of Sprout, but that's exactly what he tried to do. He let everybody go and didn't pay the checks, and then I think it was a New York corporation, and then tried to start an Illinois LLC.
That's
And
right.
then everybody just went, no, 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 no. This is not good. You cannot do this, right? So what's going on now? I mean, when I was at Western Secondary, Michael, what they were saying is like the average independent mortgage banker has 18 months that they can, as long as they have full capacity, they can pay their underwriters, pay their processors, continue to pay originators, keep the doors open in rent, and so on and so forth. But after that, the money is gone. So my question is if your monthly nut, let's say, is $800 to $1 million a month, and you're losing money on originations, or even let's say it's like $5 million a month, do you keep your doors open at a negative $5 million a month? Or do you, and growing, by the way, as capital markets may or may not take a loss?
I think there's a lot of things to look at. I think one of the things is, if you're a loan officer and you're going out there, the broker model is very attractive right now, right? But the thing with the broker model is there's a lot of independence there. You don't have somebody as a lock desk to really kind of talk you through or make you feel comfortable. Or if you've been in the industry for a while, maybe it's just what you're used to and what you like, and that's why you like the IMB model. You also don't have that same level of marketing where, just making sure I'm off mute here, you don't have that same level of marketing either that you would get at an IMB, where they're supposed to help you, and whether it's help you with the software, help you with the CRM, or help you actually bring in some leads to keep you from going other places. Within that IMB spot, it is the decentralized model versus centralized. And you, as a loan officer, are you going to continue to support the decentralized model, which is, hey, I'm very connected here in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I have 8 branches that have followed me the last 2 places. I'm happy to bring them in. You're going to need to give us a P&L. Problem is, in November and in December here, if you're a larger lender and say you have over 100 loan officers, you could have 6. If you're in the decentralized model, which you are attracting loan officers with, because they get to run a region, they get to feel like an owner within a cluster of, the whole company. But it's like if you have 8 factories at 40% capacity, that's a problem. That's eventually going to affect the pricing that you're offering, and the loan officers are going to eventually blame, or you as a loan officer, if you don't have the right pricing, you're going to go find somebody that has better pricing. And to another degree, these larger companies, the top tens, without calling them out directly in this particular piece here, but from a recruiting standpoint, 100 bips usually goes back to corporate because you're paying middle layers of management, which brokers love to point out, right? You're paying for middle layers of management. I almost think like that's eventually going to come back to like some of these brokers if they continue to work with just one wholesaler. It's just natural, right? It gets built up. But for now, yes, there is a lot of, and I don't think it's middle layers of management. I think it's legacy roles that are not as relevant that are jamming up. And in many cases, there's roles that are not necessarily needed except during the abundancy model. Like some of the CIOs at some of these lenders are probably getting paid and probably came from these huge software data companies. And at the end of the day, you as a loan officer always say, hey, I wouldn't go to my dentist to get a loan. So why would I go to a loan officer to have my teeth done or something like that? Where did it become that mortgage companies have to be a tech company as well? And why can't they fractionalize their services? I think the best, and so I would ask that as a loan officer. I mean, I was hoping we'd get some loan officers on here and really ask them, like, do they think that big of level? I think of like the local towns, right? Like the biggest problem here in New England is we have a lot of local towns and we have very high taxes here in Massachusetts. And a lot of the taxes here in my town actually pay for the pension of firefighters and police officers.
You mean property taxes, or what do you mean when you say taxes?
Yeah, town property taxes, right? But that's a large expenditure on our town pay. Is the retired because they're living longer, and it is a significant cost as more of them retire and it grows. But the reality is, does our 3 square mile town need a fire department? Analytics would say no. It's obviously you'd feel more comfortable knowing they're going to be here faster. But with all of the advancements, just like the advancements of technology and mortgage, the advancements in preventing fires through education, through what things are built in, even like what you put on your Christmas tree, like they used to put real candles on, and now they put lights, that have advanced to not setting the pine tree on fire.
That's interesting you say that.
Well, I guess my point is, there's no reason we shouldn't have 3 towns fractionalizing the fire department. There's not enough fires, and there's a lot of pension going out, and they all, do an unbelievable job. And I'm all for actually having more police officers here in our town. But it doesn't mean the police station doesn't need to be, like, you could have one police station. You could have one person working the actual dispatch and still have the same amount of police officers out there on the streets deterring crime and speeding. That's how I view, like, you still want the loan officers out there grabbing market share, but do you need 4 different CIOs for companies right now that are doing so little units when, one could probably help all? And you get a couple of those victories and you could be about 0.375% less on your rate sheet as you're trying to compete in this new market. Because the margin isn't there, right? So it's going to be, with the point, you can get lower. And that also goes into the bigger companies now, like 1 BIP or 100 basis points needs to go to corporate. Is there an IMB recruiting model where only 50 basis points goes? Somewhere in between broker today, IMB today, is that going to catch steam? And that's questions loan officers have to ask. Like, what is the strategy? Are we going to be decentralized or not? Do I want full control? Am I willing to give it up?
It's interesting you say that. I have a story to tell you real quick. It's not related to what you're talking about directly. It's indirect. But my son and I, we were talking about nationalism in the United States, and I'm going to come back to whether, if you want to be and this is related to whether an originator should be a mortgage broker or work directly for an IMB as a retail, from retail. By the way, Bettina's got her hand up down in the audience. So let's go ahead and bring her up, Michael. But but we're talking about nationalism and whether you have loyalty to our nation, this and that. And I think that one of the things that you have to ask yourself as an originator is, do you want to be loyal? Do you want to be loyal to the? Do you want to be loyal to the IMBs? To those in the audience, you couldn't hear. I'm sorry about that. We were on Discord. But do you want to be loyal to? Do you want to be loyal to your larger IMB? Do you want to be? Or do you want to be an independent broker? And if you're going to be loyal to your independent IMB, are you willing to take smaller basis points for the safety and the security that you actually are working for a direct lender? And are they offering the value to you as a direct lender, as the IMB versus the broker? To where if you are used to making 100 to 150 basis points as a broker, you're covering your own Encompass fees, you're covering your own credit report fees, you're covering your own fees and this, that, and the other. Are you willing to cover all your fees, or do you need leads, or do you need a name brand behind you? Do you need, or are you a team even? That says I can make more as a broker, but having the team of, let's say, a large company like a Guild or a Loan Depot, who are you going to be the most loyal to as an originator? What I see a lot out here in California, we have larger loan sizes, right? Our median average in San Diego County is hovering just about $1 million. So if you're going to, and with the loan limits increasing, if you're going to be buying an upsize house, your average loan size is going to be probably just north of $800,000, even with 20% down. And so, if you're a broker,
get your own fire department.
Yeah, you get your own fire department, and there is a lot of them, by the way, around here, especially in the area I live in. I live in part of San Diego where there's a lot of hills and trees and stuff like that. But anyway, so if you're the leader of an IMB, are you sitting there? Maybe I should, maybe we offer the originator 50 basis points like a bank does. Like, I think Wells Fargo starts at 40 basis points when it comes to actually commissions. But, maybe you get leads from the bank branch, or maybe you get the name brand behind you, and maybe you get a little bit more loyalty. Even if you're not producing as much, if you're, because if the IMB is making 200 basis points from front to back and they're paying the originator 40 versus 125 basis points or 100 basis points, then they can remain, the company actually can be a little bit more profitable and actually keep you on staff, which means you actually have to produce, right? And earning.
But I also think like the lender needs to come down too on the amount of basis points you're giving back to them to run, and you shouldn't have to cut marketing. Like if you're cutting marketing, then
no,
you're net zero. You might as well be a broker. Like it should be, how are you going to make, if I give you my processors at the centralized level so that you can use a company like OPX America, and
Sure.
you really can have an assistance through one of the companies, Adopt the Brands, works very closely with, but you really can have this flywheel operational system, a concierge that can take and really reduce enough costs that can give some bips back. But you got to give your processor that's been with, you got to get it back to centralized. Like I would be asking as a loan officer, and happy to consult any loan officers on what's going on nationally and kind of tell them what I would ask. But yeah, like I get in theory, us having 8 factories at 40% production is not going to look good. I get if we had one factory at 100% production, which works efficiently, okay, I'm willing to do that. And maybe I'm willing to take a reduction in my bips, but are you going to take the same reduction? And I'm going to give you half a bip towards this model. But also, you're going to do it without cutting my marketing. I want you to cut the amount of time spent looking at paperwork and files and PDFs. I want you to find those solutions out there. I don't want you to fall short on marketing, or I would be, or I would just become a broker and try to figure it out myself and use that money. I want you to come in here and have a digital marketing strategy for reverse mortgages. I want your lock desk person to say, we just found a new reverse mortgage investor, and our marketing is going to actually put out these promotional things, and you guys are going to be able to convert on the leads if you guys are like that. Can happen. Is that happening? No, because there's so much fragmentation, so many vendors fighting. There's so many vendors, right, Mike? Just like there's so many loan officers right now for so little listing. It's just there's too much for too little right now. And I'm excited that you, and the people listening here are in this for the long game. And when we make it through to the other side, we are going to be the ones as people continue to drop off and hear stories about becoming, working at, I just heard another one, somebody, going to work at the car dealership.
Hold on, before you tell your story there, we got Bettina up on the stage. And of course, we always value our listeners. And I know that Bettina's been here before. Bettina, if you're willing to come off mute, we want to hear what you have to say. Thanks for coming to the show.
Very interesting. Tell you what I see in Florida. I'm seeing a lot of the mid-sized lenders turning into brokers. I talked to some of them and they're like, look, we don't have the net worth anymore. We're roughing it out. And remember, Florida we're kind of used to the ups and downs. I mean, in 2008, that's exactly what happened. Everybody kind of shut down and then open up again, which, regulations should tell you that, that's maybe not the best, option even for the industry, but it allows them to do that, which is perfectly fine because we're all human beings. In 2008, a lot of them just shut down and then they opened back up again, as long as they didn't have any horrible, fraud that, kept them from working in the industry ever again. Now, this situation, which is, I think is quite different from 2008, even though it has some of the same, features, I would say. What I'm seeing is that the typical middle-sized lender that was FHA approved, and they're not going to be able to keep up with the expenses in technology and all that. I don't even think they want to. At this point, I think they're just downgrading to broker, working with a few wholesale lenders that they're pretty much, they have a relationship with or they know of, and they're just downsizing. And so everybody's kind of in that boat. There may be a couple of bigger ones that stay, and I think those are the ones, just like you said, at the end of this whole thing, those will come out winning. But I see a big disparity. I mean, the bigger ones are just getting bigger, and then the middle size, they're just going back to brokers because they don't want the responsibility. And there's a lot of buybacks that are being, shoved back to them. That's also a problem.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You just hit it perfectly on the head. And what would you say the loan officers, are they sticking with it? Isn't the transition to broker, or do you think after about a month or two, some of their team members are finding new IMBs to work with because they don't like the and some yeah.
That is exactly what I'm seeing. I am seeing loan officers that have been with a company, say 10 years, 8 years, and I've gotten some phone calls, and I know a lot of people in the business, and they tell me, Betty, I'm just running to whoever gives me the best deal. They're just looking for pricing. The loan officers, they don't really feel, at least down here in Florida, that name recognition doesn't mean that much to them. In Florida, it's more referral business that you get. You know what I mean? Your company doesn't give you a whole lot of leads. So the loan officers are kind of scrambling, figuring out, where do I go? I mean, do I stay or do I go? And that's kind of what I'm seeing among the loan officers, that they're not happy with the split they're getting. And they're thinking, well, I do have benefits in this company, and I have, I've been here for a long time, but even the companies are, when a whole group of loan officers just goes to another company, it just shuts down part of that company. And that's what's happening. They're looking, even as a group, they're looking for options that pay them a little bit better.
Yeah, and if you own a company or run a company, I was talking with somebody who has two top producers, right, that make up 80% of the business. The threat is if you lose one of those, it's not just that you lose 40% of your business or 50, 30, like the number, but you've now empowered that other loan officer. He or she runs the company. Because if they leave now, you're going to have to go to broker or have to do something. And I think, I don't know what it was over at, I keep saying, Homestar, but I know Wes Hunt has been in the business forever. He was one of the first people I was going after with the easy mortgage apps, with a mobile app in 2013, and he knows this industry back and forth. He's always been great. I think he's one of the first to really make a decision that probably is a right decision for many of the lenders, and there will be a blueprint, I guess, for others, which is he's going to stay in business till January 1st. People are going to get, at least no surprise, like everybody will get paid for having worked. There's probably some exit plan around the holidays, and he didn't close the door on coming back, but I think he did a serious analysis that I think two analyses. One is that it's a more profitable 2014 to just do this and come back, and he'll know when it's right. Or two, sorry, but I think the other thing is, I think people in operations are stuck in this current operational model and really wish they could knock it all down and build it back from the studs. And culturally, they know they can't, or they're told they can't, and so maybe maybe this is his chance to do that. But what I mean by that is sort of the roles. I just think there's some archaic roles that don't match the tasks, that slow everything down, and there's just a lot of people looking at folders and documents that are a result of their role more than a result of how the operations director wants it to be.
I think the problem is that there's very little business, and just like you said, too many people, very little business, and everybody's looking for that extra profit margin to be able to compete and even give the borrower a better rate or a better experience, because you have three loan officers competing for the same borrower.
The definition of insanity is doing something over and over again, but expecting a different result. And not only are originators doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, but even the leaders, the captains of our industry, are doing the same thing over and over again, expecting more productivity, right? It's like, hey, go as fast as you can. It's like Scotty on Star Trek. I'm giving it all she got. I can't do an accent in Scottish, but if you're an originator, you're chasing after that purchase business, and there's no inventory, by the way, guys. So what? You're gonna chase after something that's not there. So I know that Dave Savage talks about this quite a bit, and offering value and refinances, and just finding different facets of your business to increase productivity. And I think the same thing goes for if you're a realtor looking to get more listings, right? Well, if your traditional farm method isn't working because of the interest rate environment or whatever, then you start looking for the non-traditional ways of going to get the listing business, because the buyer business is going to be the same pool that the loan officers are going to be after right now. So if you're a listing agent, are you pursuing divorce attorneys? Are you even pursuing a collection agency, for example's sake? That's how I used to get my business as an originator 25 years ago. I didn't even chase after realtors. Back then, of course, there was more subprime business to be had, and the guidelines were much easier, of course, as well. So, but I would pursue bail bondsmen and collection agencies and everything that was non-traditional, just so I can go get that type of business. And I think that if you're that originator and you want to go get that non-traditional business, that business is to be had because of the non-QM market and even the home equity line of credit market. So the real key, if you're an originator, is if you're chasing after something and you've been doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, and you're not getting that result because you keep doing that insane thing, then go change your model. And I think the same thing goes for if you're a C-suite executive at the executive level owning the IMB. Yes, purchases are always going to be your bread and butter. Yes, you need to always prepare for that purchase business. But you need to actually say, hey, what am I going to do in order to encourage my originators and potentially change my business plan? I think that's why if you're going to do second mortgages, for example, or HELOCs as a part of your business model, and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Values have basically gone up by 100% since 2000. and 2018, home prices effectively have doubled. All this equity, refinances, average LTV is now what, like 40 or 50% probably on a home that's been owned for greater than 8 years. On top of that, consumer debt is high. Michael, I emailed you that article that Visa reported record earnings, which means that it's a leading indicator that consumer debt is going to be increasing over the course of the next 12 months as interest costs begin to increase as we have a higher interest rate environment. So as we have a higher interest rate environment, consumer debt is increasing because of inflation, gasoline costs, food costs, building costs, all these different costs that are going up. Then are you chasing after that home equity line of credit business? Are you chasing after adjustable rate mortgage business? Are you doing reverse mortgages? Michael, you touched that very briefly about 15 minutes ago. So what it used to be where if you work for an independent mortgage banker, and let's say you picked up what is it one of these HELOC companies. Who does Ralph work for, Michael?
He works for Computershare SLS. So the HELOC companies would be HELOC. Sorry, let me get this. The HELOC companies would be, you have Georgia Banking Company, you have Spring U, you have, okay, which is non-QM HELOC, right?
Right. So my point is that in the previous IMB I was working at, I think you were making 0 to 0. Basically, you were doing a HELOC for free because there was no money to be made. But fully knowing that banks are earning more per funding on HELOCs, and what I've seen, at least here in California, I don't know what it's like for you on the East Coast, is that originators are charging 3% in gross fees per funded mortgage loan because they don't qualify. You don't have truth in lending rules the same on an open-ended mortgage versus a closed-end fixed rate first. And so because the lending rules are changing, of course you don't want to trigger usury, but as far as fees are concerned, they can still be profitable. Maybe you don't earn as much per funding as IMB. Maybe you don't earn as much as an originator, but you have to go chase after that business. And there are more consumers than realtors. There are a whole bunch of consumers with debt. There are more consumers with debt than there are realtors who actually have purchased business at this point in time. So if you're an originator and you decide to actually go and chase after that business, right? And you say, hey, I'm going to go. And if you're a correspondent lender and you go, hey, I need to go pick up more HELOCs, you go call Ralph and say, hey, I want to open up a line. I think that we can go do an additional with our marketing and so on and so forth. We could probably pick up an additional $5 to $10 million in HELOCs. So how do we go and do that? So then, Ralph comes in and gives you, oh, good to see you, Ralph.
What I don't get is the more we talk about it, is that why wouldn't every loan officer tell their clients, why wouldn't you tap your equity with a line of credit just in case? Just in case your credit drops 10 points, just in case your credit card, you don't pay it off like you thought, and all of a sudden it's $300 a month in interest compounding the wrong way. Why are these people not putting bookends on available equity and just taking for granted that they can quote tap it when you can actually make it a lot more liquid? I don't. Any thoughts on that, Mike? Before Ralph comments, what is preventing that?
You don't know what you don't know, and if it's not in front of you, you don't do anything about it. We, as consumers, and even in my own household, if it's not in front of me, I'm not going to eat it. Maybe, and if I can't smell it, and it's in the other room, I'm still not going to eat it, right? So I think that you can't see home equity. It's just it's just something that we have versus something that you can see. It's just not being tapped. But Ralph, it is great to see you. Long time no talk, but thanks for coming up on the stage. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to what I had to say, Ralph, but I'd like for you to chime in as someone who really represents the line of credit or HELOC industry.
And what you and Michael were talking about, but I don't think I represent anything. But in any event, I just got back from the ABS conference, ABS East in Miami. Over the last few days, I just got back last night, And I will tell you two things that are the buzz besides all of the other asset classes that are represented in ABS at the ABS East Conference. Number one was auto. So there's a proliferation of auto securities, and there seems to be a lot of liquidity for the auto sector. That's a good thing. The second thing is second liens of all shapes, sizes, and stripes. So closed-end seconds, HELOC, and then there's even more of a buzz now for HEI, home equity investment. That's starting to take off as well. To answer your question, I mean, I think that the HELOC phenomenon that I've been trying to promote over the last 2 years is finally here, and I basically stopped talking to firm owners and CEOs. Really started to focus in on the ground level, LOs. I mean, LOs are the guys and gals that need to put money in their pocket. They have relationships with borrowers. They're the best to explain, what a HELOC can do in terms of creating borrower liquidity. Borrower liquidity is needed much more today as it was 2 years ago during the refi boom, maybe even more because of cost of living and the economics that we're in today. And my gut tells me convince the LO, and the LO will take it from there. I will tell you that a month or two ago, there was probably only one true correspondent platform to purchase second liens. So an IMB that would want to originate the loan, close it in their name, and then sell the loan on a correspondent basis. There was only one of them. I will tell you that before we make the turn into 2024, there will be at least three more. And I'm not at liberty to say who they are, at least at this point, but I definitely have been working with them to organize their platform. So I'm really excited and opportunistic and happy about what second liens are going to represent in 2024. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think as here's my gut timing on that. I think as we make the turn into the second quarter of next year, there will be a tremendous amount of competition for I'm going to use the term second lien volume, but I think more HELOC deals are getting done. But second liens, I think there will be a tremendous amount of competition for second liens, which means that there will be more securitizations going down. And then, of course, price and competition go hand in hand. So competition for the product increases, pricing will start to change. Now, that being said, a couple things. One, I'm hoping that it is not a race down the credit curve. The last two JPM deals that got done in June and September 30th were the servicer on them. Weighted average CLTV in the 70 with probably a weighted average FICO around 750. So you can tell that there's a lot of CLTV room there. There's a lot of, it's got great risk exposure. So I hope that we're not looking at a race down the credit curve. The second thing is, I think, I could be wrong, but I suspect that there will be premium compression, on these loans, meaning that no one's going to pay much more than the 103 handle, maybe 103.5, but it's not going to get crazy like it did, almost 20 years ago, with premiums being paid at the 110 to 115 range, because there's no sight on what prepay could could potentially be. And then I think the last thing is, as competition begins to increase, you're going to see LOs and their firms start to really develop a knack, I think, and a better understanding of being able to sell a second lien product to their consumer / borrower base.
I think, Ralph, that second lien HELOCs are here to stay. And actually, I'll disagree with you a little bit, but not too much. Only I think you're saying 103. I think that there's going to be more demand and a little bit higher price as a result, because I think that the payoff rate is going to be much slower when rates go down on second liens. Because there's still not going to be a whole bunch of consolidation. Yeah. As rates go down, there may end up being some more purchases, but there won't be a ton of refis. So you're not going to have early.
Yeah, Michael, I get that, and I think that, quite frankly, this has less to do with CPRs as it does where investors are reticent about wanting to pay significant premium. So I don't think that, yes, there is a premium yield adjustment, and there's no question about that. But if you did a yield adjustment to the current coupons that are out there, they'd be at the 112 to 115 range, right? Because the current coupons are anywhere from 9% to, say, 13% or 14%. And nobody is paying anything much more, tops 103. So I hear what you're saying. You're right from a math and economic perspective, but I think that, investors have gotten their heads handed to them in the past with overpaying.
I'll agree with that, but I think our human nature says that investors begin to get greedy after a period of time of complacency. So that's the only reason I say that, Ralph. And I would like to agree with you, but unfortunately, I've seen greed rear its very ugly head too many times.
Yeah, the greed factor, Michael, I agree, will kind of come into play, but that will be the race down the credit curve.
Yeah. That might be 2 years from now, by the way, Ralph. I'm not saying immediately. I'm saying that might be 2 years down the road.
Yep.
So loan officers today, I guess what prevents them from selling it well is one, they don't have much experience in it, but they have all these preconceived notions from 08, like, oh, you shouldn't use your house as a credit card, right? And I think you always say it well, Michael, that homeowners look at their balance sheet incorrectly when they look at houses and mortgages. And I think consumers need to be educated by the loan officers that this new world of buy now, pay later, everywhere around you is all these hidden fees that are going to Visa, MasterCard, Affirm, where if you used your house correctly, if you locked in one of these, you as a loan officer, if you taught them correctly, you're actually not getting them in worse debt. You're keeping them from worse debt that's hidden all around them, would be my, which I hope somebody starts to come up with a program to educate loan officers on that. So when they're going around and getting recruited by mortgage companies, the HELOC strategy needs to be part of it, because not only are you bringing a new level of education that stalls after it closes, it gives you a chance to be more of a loan officer for life if you really want to be one. But I assume that you also have the opportunity to know when they're going to refinance or purchase. If you have gotten a second on them, you can get indications. Like that, to me, that would be an advantage too. Like if I don't even have the first, but I can get a second lien on somebody's home, then there's going to be payoff opportunities, right? Where I can try and get them into a first, second, or find out they're looking for a new home.
seconds are going to be super hot. I think that if I think we're looking at the past to dictate our future, and the reason I say that is because if you're I'm a Gen X guy, right? So in my generation, it was about spend today and worry about tomorrow. And I think what's different about the current group of homeowners, we're talking about the silver wave, which never happened, by the way, and the Gen X owners, and this new wave of owners now who are under the age of 30, let's say 37 or 38 years old. They're just not taking on as much consumer debt. Yes, consumer debt is high and so on and so forth, but I would attribute that, and I don't know what the demographic is, but I would not be surprised if the majority of people who are in debt are mostly over the age of 45, and this newer generation under the age of 35 is just not taking on as much debt. There are more savers than spenders, and I think that when they see that the people who have HELOCs are just not refinancing, paying that off, I think that, and that's why I say we're kicking the can 2 years down the road as far as profitability is concerned. The profitability of HELOCs is going to be good, but not only that, there's just so much business to be had in HELOC business because of the equity position. We're truly missing out on the originators, and IMBs are missing out not only on profit centers, but also on the education level that they can give to not just consumers, but homeowners as well. And there's just so much education that could be had if we would just be able, if more originators, more on an emotional basis, so they can say, this is why you get this done. Don't just sit there in your head, but figure it out in your head, and then look at your family and go, yeah, we need to get a HELOC because this makes sense for investments, for future, and just so many more things. And if you're a licensed Series 7 financial advisor, you can't tell someone to take equity out of your home to do X, Y, Z certain things, and you can't tell them to go buy more securities because you can't tell them to get a variable investment. And then because of selling away rules with the financial advisors, you can't say, well, let's go buy another house. Go take your money and buy a house because even though they're financial advisors, they can't tell them to sell securities to go buy something, another investment. So I think that the HELOC at this point in time is an underutilized, and the entire population uninformed homeowners that are out there right now. I won't say uneducated, I'll just say uninformed, that they have the opportunity to educate themselves financially that is used as a tool to get them from point A to point B rather than a tool to just eat or have a vacation. I think we have smarter homeowners today. I think we have more fiscally educated homeowners today, and this is an opportunity to go deeper and fiscally teach people how to utilize equity as a tool to move forward rather than as a tool just to get by. So thanks for coming up and sharing with us. I really appreciate that. We're about a quarter of the ways in. Michael, we didn't even get a chance to talk about what's going on with NAR and what's going on with compensation or anything that's going on with that. Did you want to add any color, Michael, to what's going on with the National Association of Realtors, when it comes down to compensation, when it comes from should sellers be compensated, should buyers be compensated? Do they have any movement on any litigation that's going on? Have you looked into that, Michael?
I have just sat in on like the Housing Wire conference, and I think it's still kind of how can they play within the rules. One person said that, just so everybody knows, you can't now build in the automatic buyer's compensation, buyer's agent compensation into the listing. So technically speaking, a consumer, and I say technically because I don't know the actual answer yet, and but you would actually go as a consumer now to a buyer's agent, and they would have to sell you on some sort of down payment to represent you. Versus in the past, they would say, "Don't worry, it doesn't come out of your pocket." I think loan officers can relate more than anybody right now because there's no margin in loans, and so they were so used to selling no closing cost loans since 2010. They're having to charge closing costs and points too, so they're getting used to it's not as easy when somebody has to put, essentially pay money. But I think some of the people are saying, well, technically, what are they saying? Technically, it says now like you can go down to a dollar. So all this is really saying is you can go down to $0, and they still could put it in there that there is compensation from the seller's agent. And then other people are saying no chance. This is actually going to prevent, at least from listing it in certain MLSs, that like that is what you're going to do. So I don't really have that answer. I think this is a subject we can get guests around. I asked Kathy Souza. I would love an audience who's a big but it was kind of like during this show, so no notice. But she said she will definitely come up and speak. But she just believes that transparency of costs in the industry is a good thing. But there's probably a big discrepancy on what is happening now and what the outcome will be. And as it becomes clearer, it'll be easier for people to make clear opinions on it. I know obviously the lending industry relies on that buyer's agent as a big part of their model, right?
Yes.
I don't even know, like, give me a role play. What's the sales strategy to controlling the listing agent? What are they actually, from a RESPA standpoint, able to say to a buyer coming in that already has a mortgage company?
I think everything still has the opportunity to be the same, first of all, Michael. And I think that anything that's going on right now is just realtor against realtor, broker owner versus realtor, NAR against against realtors. I think everything is just one big ruse to create a division among its own industry right now, when really the reality is that for the last however long since I've been in the business, and probably 50 years before me, it's been that you have a real estate agent that signs the commission agreement that says that a certain amount is going to go to the buyer's agent, a certain amount is going to go to the brokerage, and then through that brokerage commission, they share in a commission split of monies that's received. I think, at least in California, there's some transparency on how that's supposed to be done. I don't know how it's done in other states, but what I do think is that it's a travesty that you have a large organization such as NAR, and you have these lawsuits that are going on. And I think you only see these lawsuits when times are tough, not when times are good. And so to see so much division.
I don't know about this one though. Like, this one's been a long time in action. We actually have Bill Wendell on here, who I'll have to speak to privately and get some information. He's not. I don't think he usually participates in these radio type shows, but he's been. This will, as Kathy said, level up the professionalism of the industry. To me, it sounds like the realtors that have a problem with this, or real estate agents that have a problem with this old model, are, and this is just I don't really know. Like, I'm not. I shouldn't, like, I don't know enough to. This could sound way off, but my opinion is, realtors got together and said, because like one of the alternatives I heard, this is where I got the idea, is, well, now maybe you'll come in and offer $400,000 for the home, right? With a $15,000 commission to my buyer's agent as the offer on the purchase and sale. To me, that says like that was probably at some point sort of how it went, and realtors got together, hence the collusion, and said, this is insane that we have to spend an extra 5 weeks going back and forth on educating our buyers that the 15,000 is necessary, and they're actually paying $415, but we have to write it this way, and that's the market. And we've had these conversations in mortgage sometimes when you wrap in certain costs or rates, but you're trying to tell them like this is the way it is, and they said, you know what, this is why do the hard work and sell it appropriately and help the consumer understand on every cost how much they're really paying to have me work on it. Why don't we just wrap it all in and make it sound like it's the transaction, no money out of pocket, and when they go sell it, the same thing will happen to them, and we can just save a lot of time, because it's hard enough to get a listing with a CRA or get a buyer's agent. Look at all the work we do going around and showing properties. Like, as a buyer's agent, we might show 75 properties. We might lose out on 68 offers to State Street, right? BlackRock. No fault of our own, taking a chance. We might never get paid. And now you're going to add that when it's time to get paid, we're going to have to hear that we're making too much with the person that we only had to show 2 properties because they don't know all the work that would have happened if they lost those other 66 offers. I think that's where, just like mortgage, it is so fragmented and different. You can get into the weeds and argue either side. But I think they're saying, tough luck. It's going to be hard to sell, and you're going to have to sell it now as, tell them, yeah, you make 15,000. You make 10,000.
No, it's a travesty whenever a consumer asks, "Hey, where does your commission come from?" and the buyer's agent says, "Oh, the seller's paying for it." And no, everybody's paying for it. You're paying for it in the price. The seller's paying for it. But it's not even a matter of who's paying for it. There's a value that's being given as a result of agency. That's the part that we're missing, that the consumers are missing. There's value in agency, there's value in representation, and there's value in what you are doing. It's like when a loan officer says, "Hey, you get to skip 2 mortgage payments," when that's absolutely false, right? And if you've ever taken a physical in-person class to renew your license, whether it was a mortgage license or your local or a local license, you're not allowed to say that you're skipping payments, because you never are skipping payments because of the per diem interest that's being charged there. There's value in the per diem interest.
Mike, we got. This is the best time of the year to give that line. It's closed in November. You won't have a payment during the holidays. In fact, your first payment won't be till next year.
Yeah, I know. Oh man! And when I first came in the business, I came in the business October of '96, and they told me, "Yeah, just tell them that they skip a payment. No payment for Thanksgiving or before things. No payment in November because we're closing in October or November 5th. No payment in December, and your first payment's on January 1st. You get to have extra money for the holidays." And I'm like, "Really? Wow, that sounds." And then when I actually found out about the math behind it and said, "Oh, wait a second, there's per diem interest. There's no free lunch here." And I think that there's too many. It's not that there's too many bad actors, but there's just too many bad habits that consumers are misinformed about what is valuable and what is not valuable. And if we as an industry would put more value to the services that are being rendered instead of the horrible lie-tech lies that were established 20 years ago that said no points, no fees. And there's actually, and that we can actually put value to our industry on both sides, realtors and loan officers. There are huge lessons to be learned here. If I'm looking at it, if I'm Owen Lee over at and I'm running MoreTalk right now, I'm sitting here going, we got to figure out how to get more originators into the MBA so we can stand with the MBA, with our organization. Because right now, NAR is not necessarily falling apart, but they're not doing a very good job of maintaining integrity with the members that are there right now. And so, like I said, to me, all these lawsuits and all these things are just more talks about division, and all it does is weaken an industry. It's weakening the realtor industry or the real estate industry, and has the potential of weakening the mortgage industry from a participatory standpoint of employment, from originator to independent mortgage banker or originator to its broker. And we have the opportunity to fix it, but we keep doing the same thing over and over again when it comes to selling rate versus selling value, and it's just weakening our business right now.
Yeah, Kathy in the audience said, and if you comment in the audience at any point, or I'll get that into a second. Costs associated with the transaction of buying and selling. It is a professional service that is being offered. For a long time, no one was talking about the costs, and that is what some of the misunderstanding is. There clearly are fees, as Mike Zhao is saying. Boom.
Yeah. That's the problem. Yeah. I mean, I've probably bought and sold, I don't know, over 20 houses at least, if not 30. And I pay for the transaction coordinator, and I always pay full price. And people will ask me, if you've done this many transactions, doesn't the realtor who you work with offer you some kind of discount? I say, yes, they typically do. And if they do, it's not because I asked, it's because they decided to do it on their own. That's their deal, not mine. If they're offering money, that's their deal. I'm not asking for it. But I think that because I value the services that are being rendered to me, and as a former owner of a realty, I know what they have to do, and there's back end stuff. Sometimes realtors will pay for transaction coordinators, or sometimes they come in and give this, that, and the other. It's a give and take game, and eventually, karma always comes to hit us, whether good or bad. And right now, we need to be able to add more value in valuing the fees that we offer as a service, which is why I disagreed with you, Michael, at the very beginning to say that the IMBs or the mortgage companies need to lower their margins. I think their margins are just fine. I think actually they should be earning more so they could be able to offer more. Yes, rates suck right now, but that's more of an industry fact and an economic fact of what's going on right now, rather than, hey, we need to have the IMBs earn less money and have originators earn more or whatever.
Well, you disagreed with Ralph. You disagreed with me, Mike. The audience loves you. They say you're making great points. I don't know. I feel like I'm a little worried you're going to spin off and have your own spin-off sitcom. So, but I'm kidding. We do this every Thursday at 2 p.m., 11 a.m. Pacific. It's also posted the replay on YouTube. And I would say the number one ask that we're looking for is guests that want to come on and speak for 5 to 7 minutes, no longer, no shorter, maybe. And if they have an idea about a topic and they could invite a couple other guests so we can just do like a speed call in, like the radio sports stations, 4 or 5 callers on the same subject. If you can help us do that, if you have an idea or you have 2 or 3 people that would jump on, I don't like it together. I almost want to do it boom, 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 boom. And if you like it, you can come on the next week and then say it again, or you can message in. Just like the radio, we're trying to be a little different. There's 200 podcasts out there, maybe more in these fields. There's only one radio show, and that's MoreTalk.
We didn't even get a chance to talk about the ABS show. I've been talking to whole loan traders in capital markets. And that's something. I didn't attend the show in Miami because it was right after the MBA annual.
Well, next week we'll get Ralph on, and he can talk about also, I think there's another securitization one coming up in New York. You guys can talk back and forth, and we'll see. Maybe we can get a couple other guests of people that attended it, and then we'll have a show there.
Some whole loan traders actually talk about secondary market, if not for seconds, at least for firsts, and see what is the appetite for actual mortgage loans that are going on for sale, and are they, because if they're not selling to Wall Street but they're selling them, who are they selling to? And we can have that kind of discussion, so we can talk about what are the newer products that's not being talked about at the trade shows, and because it's still a year away, and it's going to be exciting to see, because I'm having some discussions with whole loan traders right now, and also with some other people at the insurance companies, and I'm not going to talk about what's coming out, but I think it's exciting on the potential. So let's talk about that next week.
See you next week, Mike. I'm excited.
See ya. Okay, see you guys.